You're listening
to the Beer O'Clock Show.
You're listening to the Beer O'Clock Show.
It's Beer O'Clock, and this is the penultimate Beer O'Clock Show for 2015. My name is Mark, and joining me is my good old beer buddy, Steve. Hello, Steve.
Hi, Mark. How you doing?
I'm doing alright, mate. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Very good. Also joining us tonight, a man who brings a lot to the table, usually his front lip, all the way from somewhere in Ireland. It's Wayne Dunne. Hello, Wayne.
Hello. You'll be happy to know that I've put foam all over the table tonight, so if I do happen to face plant, I won't be hurt this time.
Also joining us, from the same spot in Ireland, but about half a metre to the left, is the best Irish beer podcaster in their house, Janice. Hello, Janice.
Oh, thank you. How are you guys?
We're very well, thank you.
Good, thank you. You guys, you all good?
Very good. Very, very good. It's getting into the festive season over here now, where drinks akimbo. Something seems to be cropping up every night. It's a bit scary.
Yep, I know that feeling.
So speaking of drinks, what have we been drinking? Stevie, let's start with you, mate. What have you had in the last week or so?
Okay, well, I'm going to start off. I went to the British Guild of Beer Writers dinner last week.
Hey.
I was invited, to which I'm very grateful for, by Shepherd Neame as a guest to their table. And I got to go to the dinner, and it was a great evening. It was great to see so many writers getting the rewards that they deserve, I think, for the work that they're doing. Just some people to note, and all people that have appeared on the show before as well. So Matt Curtis got a silver award in one of the categories for best online communicator. Jane Payton, who was on the show earlier on in the year, she won an award. Rich Taylor, who's been on the show before, he won an award. It's like, we're a breeding ground for talent, mate. People come on the show and then they win awards. So that was a good evening, and there was lots of beer there, but nothing really to write home about. I mean, some of the Shepherd Neame stuff that they were sharing, they cracked open one of those bottles of the 1215 ale. Mm-hmm. You know, the one that we got sent to celebrate the Magna Carta, and that's lovely. It's just like this thick, syrupy barley wine. Yeah. So get that cracked over Christmas and enjoy that if you've still got a bottle of that. But then the only other really standout beer of my week was from, once again, Buxton Brewery, absolutely smashing it out of the park for me. I know it's getting boring now, but they just keep producing consistently great beers. This was a sour gooseberry IPA called Troll Tunga, mate, and it just knocked my socks off. It was on the nose, it kind of had the citrusy, piney, resinous aroma of an IPA, but then on the flavour it was just this sour, tart, face-smacking, lip-sucking thing. It was beautiful. Absolute standout beer of the week.
How does that compare to the Cloudwater Dipper that you've been raving about?
It's nowhere near as good as a Cloudwater Dipper. It's a completely different style, mate. Completely different category of beer. And I'm still putting the Dipper up there as my beer of the year at the moment.
Very good. The Dunnes, how about you guys? What have you been drinking lately?
Well, last week we were fortunate enough to go to the launch of the new Irish brewery, Arthurstown Brewery it's called, and it's by Kevin Dunne, which is an Irish chef. The beers I had was the Red Ale, which I thought was stunning.
Yeah, Kevin Dunne is a famous chef. He owns a restaurant called Dunbrody House, or it's a country estate down in the southeast of Ireland in Wexford. And him and a few people got together to say, it'd be a good idea, let's start a brewery. So they've got a pretty experienced brewer in there. They had launched with a pale ale, red ale, and a stout was its first try. That was pretty good.
And the IPA then as well.
And the IPA needs a bit of work.
Yeah.
But yeah, the interesting comment was 5 people got together one night after having a few beers, let's chuck in 10 grand each. And then 6 months later, they've spent 450 grand. So I'm like, where have you spent this money? But I think from Kevin Dunne's point of view, he's quite popular in America, so he's looking at export market as well. In terms of new beers,
it's just been our craft event, really, that we've been doing the past few days.
Yeah, well, we've had a couple of new ones. We've had, The Galway Bay Godspeed is more available now. The Mango Kettle Sour, I've had that a couple of times. Obviously, 8 Degrees have a new Christmas range out, which we haven't had to try yet, but I'm looking forward to trying that. But yeah, mainly just the last week or so has been our advent calendar of crazy stouts, porters, imperial stouts, barrel aged, whatever. Anything dark, and a couple of wild cards thrown in there as well. So we had the new version of Black Eye King Imp actually last night. Very, very impressed. I'm not quite sure if I prefer it to the old one, but still, I really enjoyed it anyway.
Cool. What have I had?
What about you, mate? What have you been drinking?
Well, I had a few this week.
Hey!
Well, by a few I mean 3. I had the. I'm going to murder the pronunciation of this, but Bourgogne de Flanders, which is a Belgian brown ale, which was very nice. Hair of Darkness from the Mad Hatter Brewing Company, which was a black IPA. I think you would have liked that one, Steve, if you've not had it before.
I can't say it's one that I have tried before, no.
It's lovely. It's one of those black IPAs that are like really thick on the palate, really nice and malty, but also getting that hop kick in there as well. And tonight I had, before I started recording, a Brixton Pale Ale, which was lovely and refreshing. So that's my lot. I forgot to mention at the top of the show that the beer we're doing tonight is from Galway Bay. It's a barrel-aged imperial stout, 10%, called 200 Fathoms. And shall we crack this open now, guys? Because it might take us a little while to get through.
I think so, yes. I've been itching to get my hands on this since Wayne sent it over to us about 8 months ago.
Alrighty.
Yeah, I'm actually looking forward to trying it now. It's aged out a bit because at the launch back in, was it January?
Yeah.
It was still really amazing, but you just got the feeling it was a little bit young.
Oh, lovely, sweet woody notes off the bottle.
Yeah, it's a bit of a job taking off the wax.
See, I removed the wax earlier, having been sat here before when we've been trying to remove wax from bottles.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a struggle.
I did that as well.
See, Steve, that's why you're a pro and I'm not.
Well, didn't want to say anything, mate, but...
Right, 1 pint of imperial stout it is. Because it's a nice big bottle.
It's lovely. The aroma on it is just... it's absolutely to die for. It's so inviting. It just smells silky and velvety and luxurious, and I just want to... that's good. That is just so nice, that aroma.
I love the head on it. It's just a really inviting kind of chocolatey colour, the head. Yeah.
I've got exactly the same. I've got this beautiful, probably a finger's worth of big, thick, foamy head on it as well. And it just looks beautiful in the glass as well.
Just makes you want to cannonball right into it, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Challenge accepted.
From the top board.
Shall we get stuck into this and then we'll get on to the news, mate?
Yeah, let's give this a go.
All right, cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Sláinte.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my.
Silky smooth.
Oh, yeah.
That is stunning.
That has mellowed out so much from launch.
This time, though, I can really get the whiskey aftertaste.
Yeah, I think we were fortunate to be there on the launch night so as a bit of background on the 200 Fathoms, if you don't mind, Mark, before I jump into the news. 200 Fathoms is the second batch of Galway Bay's Imperial Stout. So they did it last year. And last year they did it using bottle casks of yellow spot whiskey, which is Jameson. And, very different. But then, I suppose, with the ethos of craft brewing in Ireland, they approached one of the newer distilleries that's opened in Dublin, Teeling, and they've used casks from Teeling whiskey. And from what I understand, that's going to be a kind of symbiotic relationship for the next while. So I think Teelings are going to put some of their whiskey back into the casks as well to see how it finishes off. It was launched back in January, wasn't it?
Cool. Okay. Anything else you want to start with, or shall we get into the news?
I'll go for the news, man.
Thanks. Glad you're letting us get on with our stuff, Wayne.
All right, Stevie, do you want the pips?
Yeah, give us the pips.
All right. Beep, 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 beep.
Okay, so quite a bit of news this week. You remember a while back we were talking about the AB InBev takeover of SAB Miller, and a few months before that we were talking about the SAB Miller takeover of Meantime. Well, AB InBev have decided they don't want Meantime, so they're selling them again. Which is really unfortunate because Meantime at the moment must not know whether they're coming or going. So unfortunately, Meantime Brewery in London are up for sale again. We'll bring you more news of that story as it develops. But I've just got to say, like I say, I really feel for those guys at that brewery because they must be in a real tiz as to where they stand at the moment with things. Moving on, beer merchants, who are one of the fantastic online suppliers that give us a discount for our listeners, they've now launched a monthly beer subscription service and tasting club. Of course they have. Every online supplier has to have one of these. But this is going to give people access to exclusive beers and discounts across the sites, as well as VIP invites and tickets to events that Beer Merchants and Cave Direct run. If you want more information about that, it's beermerchants.com/beer club. Last week, the world's hoppiest beer ever was released by Dogfish Head. Now, this is measuring at 658 IBUs, which is some 600 units higher than the average IPA. Named Hooland, the limited edition ale, been brewed by Dogfish Head, using an experimental hop called Alpha Beast. Unfortunately, it seems as though it's only available in the States.
What a shame.
If we've got anybody listening over there, let us know what it tastes like. Cloudwater have released their winter range of beers, and it looks stunning. There are a couple of big bottles in there. So there's an imperial stout, there's a barrel-aged imperial stout, there's a couple of lagers, there's a winter wheat, there's a brown ale, and there's one that has really caught my eye, which is a custard porter. I cannot wait to get my hands on that and give it a go, that's for sure. And then another new beer launch, Northern Monk Brew Co., who are based in Leeds, where we'll be starting off the Crimbo Crawl in a week or so's time, have released a Christmas edition of one of their beers. So Festive Star is a spiced mocha porter. Again, another one I'll be looking forward to giving a try in a couple of weeks. And then finally in this week's news, we had Andy on from the Craft Can Directory talking about the new directory that was going to launch. Well, we're pleased to announce that that's now launched. And they've also given our listeners a 10% discount off their site. So the details are on the website, but the 10% discount code is CraftCan Welcome, and you'll be able to find that particular website at craftcan.directory. And that's the end of the news, mate. Back to the beer. Because it's so warming. I can already feel my face warming up after just a couple of sips, which is brilliant. This is exactly what this sort of beer should do to you at this time of the year.
I was just saying that to Janice, actually. I was like, is it warm in here or is it just me? Definitely, it's a real winter warmer. It's lovely.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Yeah, it's like cold, boozy Vegemite. It's nice.
Now you can see why I really want to make a batch of brownies with this.
Oh, I can imagine how great they would taste, but that's a waste of the beer. This is a beer to be drunk and savoured. And I know quite a few of our listeners managed to get hold of bottles of this as well, so I'm hoping that people are going to be tweeting us in this week with their views on the beer when they eventually crack it, because I think for me this is exactly what I look for in this sort of style of beer.
Oh yeah, I think a few people look at get it off Ken and Drink Store before he kind of stopped shipping to the UK. I think I remember a few of the guys saying that there's some sent over, and it's definitely benefited from 8-9 months in the bottle. It's mellowed out so much. Like it was quite boozy sharp on first tasting at launch. Now I had it in both keg and bottle, but it's definitely mellowed. It's just, as Steve said, it's silky smooth. It's almost like velvet going down. And then you get the real vanilla, the warmth from the whiskey at the end. Again, Chris down there in Galway Bay has really shown he's very capable of brewing really good beers, and he's not afraid to experiment as well with some of the releases he's brought out recently as well. I think there's a salted caramel brown sour type thing for Christmas, which I noted on your demand for Christmas list, Steve.
Thank you.
So they're not afraid to try experimental stuff, which is really good to see. But yeah, I think it's going to be a really good relationship, I think, between Teelings and Galway Bay, because they seem to have a very similar ethos. Teelings obviously based in Dublin city centre, and Galway Bay have a number of pubs around the city centre, one actually only about 10 minutes from the distillery, so they've got that friendship going on, which is good to see. It's about time as well that an Irish distillery latched on to a craft brewer in that kind of sense, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, if they continue to produce stuff like this year on year, this is going to be almost up there as one of those beers that's going to be, you're going to buy two every time. You're going to want to put one away for a few years and then drink one, maybe not straight away, but fairly fresh, because it's interesting to note that you say the differences between the release in January and now, and how it's rounded off quite a lot since then. I mean, I don't have that reference point, but it's great that you guys are able to say, yeah, actually, it's a much better beer that now than it was then.
Yeah, and I think it's actually the first time I've kind of seen in the Irish market real, genuine, Unhuman Cannonball style hype over a beer being released. Now, you know, some people love that, some people hate that. It's the way it'll always be, but I think Galway Bay were very clever in how they launched it. They did one launch pub in Dublin had one keg, one launch pub in Galway had one keg, but every pub in the chain had numerous bottles available. And this year there was less people disappointed not getting it than there was last year.
But that's purely down to the reason that they staggered the bottle release as well. They didn't launch it all at the one time. They launched it over, a month or two?
Yeah, you were still able to get bottles end of February easily.
So hopefully now when you actually come over for the All Tech Festival in February, they might have actually released the next one.
Yeah, hopefully. It's on the calendar as far as I know. But again, you know, they took on board what a lot of people were saying. It's like, what's the point in making such a great beer if you make so little of it? And with the new brewery, and they've got the old brewery now is that their dedicated whiskey barrel aging facility, so they have more space to brew these kind of things, and with Teelings being available to give them casks, I think they've probably given very few casks by Jameson for the yellow spot previously, so it's all looking up. But it's definitely the first time I've ever gone in at the Brewdog, the pub that had the launch, and it was like 4 or 5 people deep at the bar, and I think we got the second or third pints, or 2/3, after the actual distiller from Teeling, who was there doing tastings as well, side by side with their whiskey. So like if you didn't like whiskey beforehand, you definitely did come out afterwards liking whiskey. But yeah, no, it's a great job again from Chris and the lads, and hopefully with Galway Bay picking up distributor in the UK, you might actually see it filtering over there anyway, because you know, I think they're talking about doing the rest of their releases in 330ml bottles for export market, which makes a bit of sense given, say, the likes of Foam and Fury would be quite expensive to export if they were doing it in 500ml bottles, for example.
I can understand that with the likes of Foam and Fury, but something like this, I don't want 330ml of this. I want a big bottle of this. In fact, I'm almost unhappy that I've only got 500ml here. Because it's one of those that literally at this time of the year you want to pour it at the beginning of the evening and you want to still be drinking it just before you go to bed.
Yeah, and I don't think with 200 Fathoms that they'd probably go down the 330ml route, because it's much more of an experience.
Well, don't be giving them ideas then.
They never listen to me anyway. So. But it's definitely a situation where I think it has that grandeur in terms of it's a big bottle, it's got a nice fancy wax seal on it, it's got a good label, has batch number on it. You know, it's one of those things that I think, you know, it's an experience getting a bottle like that. You know, the way that you sometimes pick up, like, I think you can still get Great Divide Yeti over here, 2013 and 14 bottles, and it's in a big bottle. It's made for sharing, but I don't think I'd share a bottle of 200 Fathoms, to be honest. I know we're doing it tonight for the purposes of this, but it is a real. You could sit over it and sip on it for a while. I think kind of like my strategy at Indie Man this year: start with the biggest possible ABV first, sip on it for a while, and see how you get on. Because I think it's just there's so many things going on to enjoy in the flavour that I think, I took this out of the fridge about an hour and a half, 2 hours ago, so it's come up to temperature nicely as well. You would lose a lot with like the draft pour. You lost a lot of the subtleness that's there. It was quite harsh, I thought, on draft compared to this.
So let's get some more thoughts on the beer then. Mark, I know you love giving thoughts about beer first. So what I'm probably about 2/3 of the way down on mine. It's by no means a beer that I'm rushing tonight.
Mm-hmm.
What are you getting from it now, mate?
Sounds like you're rushing it if you're 2/3 of the way down.
Oh no, sorry, 1/3 of the way down. So the other way. I'm crap at maths.
Well,
I'm a third of the way down, mate. What are you getting from it?
I'm almost a half of the way down. Lovely sweet woody notes in there. I said before that it's like a cold, boozy Vegemite, and by that I mean you're getting this lovely thick maltiness coupled with a bitterness and a slight yeastiness in there. And and like Wayne was saying, you get some of the vanilla coming through as well, and it's all just all these different flavors kind of just swimming in amongst this glass of black treacliness. It's quite nice.
I love that. Janice, what are you thinking of this?
I actually really like it now, but when it first launched, I wasn't a stout drinker, so I thought the first one was absolutely horrible. And then last year, I was like, oh God, no, I'm not too sure about this. But now I'm really, really enjoying it, because over the past year, I have been getting into stouts a lot more. But this one I like because it's going down really smooth, but it has that nice kind of thick bite to it. It's not a very, very light stout, so I really like it.
Janice, I'm going to go for a comparison here that I think only you and I and few of our listeners might get. To me, this is like actually tasting the liquid version of the brownies before you put them in the oven. It's got the same feel. It's almost got the same texture. It's got that booziness, and then it finishes with that real bitter kick at the end of it. Do you get that, or is that just me going a bit mad?
It's like licking the spoon after you've put the mixture into the bacon tin. It's just
absolutely yes.
It sticks to your teeth as well. This beer.
It's got real viscosity. Like you could see it when you were pouring it thick. Someone ate his thesaurus today. But yeah, it's even looking at it being poured into the glass. It looks luxurious and thick, and this is not viscous. It's not going to be a beer that you're going to knock down in 3 mouthfuls, and if you can, fair play to you. But it's something to be enjoyed, and I think Steve and Janice, being the brownie breakers, would know that I only ever taste the final product, so I don't get the experience of licking the spoon.
No, it's an interesting point you make there, mate. It didn't so much pour out of the bottle, but it glugged out of the bottle because of the thickness behind it. Absolutely. I mean, I'm blown away by it. It's beautifully soft. It's beautifully rounded as well. All the flavours are so well balanced in there. I'm getting a lot of dark chocolate, maybe a hint of caramel in there as well. I'm getting a ever so slight burn from the whiskey at the end, and that's bringing through some woody notes as well. But in terms of all of those flavours mixing together, they just balance out so nicely into this drink, which is just amazing. And I'm going to say it, for 10%, it is hiding that ABV fairly well. You're drinking a big, boozy, impy stout, but you're possibly thinking, 10%, I'm not so sure about that, but it's just incredible. It's an incredible beer, and we're incredibly grateful to you for sending this over to us.
Yeah, no, there's no problem at all.
Thanks very much, guys.
I'm being extra extra bowed and really enjoying it with a whiskey chaser.
Oh God, the machines are off again.
You can tell someone doesn't have work tomorrow.
I just had to. Come on, I had to. It's 200 Fathoms of Teeling whiskey, and then I've got Teeling small batch. It's only a small one.
That's what Oliver Reed used to say right before he died. But yeah, like it just really demonstrates. I think aging for big beers is very important. I think like while it was really really good and it's by far like one of the best imperial barrel aged stouts we have coming out of Ireland at the moment. I think it's really really benefited from the extra time to just relax and chill out in the bottle, just to condition out further. I think it's given it that real danger in terms of it doesn't taste like 10%, and that's always a sign to me of a well-made beer that it hides its ABV very well, but you still get the hint that it could knock you out if you took it, the wrong way. I'm actually looking forward to trying the previous year's version now.
Before you do that, though, take a sip with the whiskey and then the beer. Brings it to a whole different level.
It's got massive drinkability for me as well. It's just so easy to drink, and as I say, it's one that I would very happily pour at the beginning of the evening and just carry on or throughout the night with it. And I'm at that stage now where I want cheese as well. I need cheese with this.
Big blue cheese would be lovely right now.
Yeah, it would that would just match perfectly. Bring me cheese, somebody.
Send out an SOS there for cheese for Steve. Yeah, whiskey works really well with it. I think I've seen that done a few times where they encourage you to drink the matched whiskey to it. Now, Teeling obviously are the newest independent distillery opening up in Dublin in not centuries quite, but definitely decades, and they have a really impressive distillery out in Dublin 8, not far from St James's Gate actually. But I think they found a very good partner to do it with. I did note that Five Lamps Brewery have teamed up with Glendalough Distillery this year to bring out a batch of 3 different beers, pale ale, a red ale. It's a black IPA, a stout, and a red ale are all aged in whiskey casks, so it'll be quite interesting. Don't worry, Steve, it's in your stocking filler list already.
Thank you.
But yeah, like it's really interesting to see now. I think that the Irish market is a bit more ready for it. O'Hara's have been doing barrel-aged stouts for a while. But I think more and more are beginning to try it now, and they're beginning to access casks by whatever means necessary and giving them the opportunity to make a stout that's aging in a cask for 6 months, 12 months, or however long it takes. But definitely really, really smooth. Really enjoying that. I'm trying to think, should I finish the other one first, or should I sip the other one and then taste the other one?
I've just had a sip of the first one.
Right.
I definitely don't get as much of the whiskey through this one.
Yeah.
And I find it much lighter. It's not as thick as the Teeling whiskey.
Now, this other one's 2 years in a bottle now. Living up to our monikers tonight, anyway, aren't we?
now I know that
the table's that way, Wayne.
Mark, you're not the biggest fan of barrel-aged stuff, are you?
No.
No.
Well,
so
it's not like I dislike barrel-aged beers. I just wish people would stop barrel-aging things all the time.
Okay, so you think it's a style that's overdone, rather than you don't like
my issue
what comes out?
Is like someone will come out with a great beer, and the next iteration is, let's chuck it in some barrels for a bit. Saying that, you gave me a bottle of Moose Fang barrel aged last week, and I can't wait to get into it. So
I was going to say, I've never seen you so excited in all of your life when I gave you that bottle. I was just about to call you on that as well, but you got in there first.
I could sense you were poised, Steve. Poised and ready to strike. Like a praying mantis.
But Moose Fang has a special place in my heart.
Moose Fang, I'm pretty sure we tried that at Indie Man. I think some beers just shouldn't go anywhere near a barrel, but that's just me personally. I'm all for experimentation and trying things, but why... I don't know, pale ales in barrels.
Yeah.
It's got to be a dark beer for me.
It's got to be something dark that's able to carry the extra flavours it's taken on board, and like a hoppy. I know, like I've got a couple of Dogfish Head in the fridge there. Like, was it the oak aged IPA, and Just to me, the oak didn't add anything to the beer. It kind of probably detracted from it, in my opinion. But I understand why people want to do it, because they're trying to branch out and be different and something out there. Must say, the previous batch of 200 Fathoms is a very different tasting beer to the one we just tasted as a group. There, it seems thinner. I know it's still as high in alcohol, but it just seems to be a little bit thinner and easier to drink. Now, is that because it's been conditioning for 2 years, or is that just because it's a different beer? But yeah, it's definitely a little bit thinner, but it's got the flavour characteristics, but not quite as much of the whiskey at the back end for me.
Is it the same base beer that they've used in both cases? I mean, before it becomes 200 Fathoms, is this just a standard Galway Bay stout that they choose, or is it a beer that they brew specially to go into the casks?
It's a very high gravity beer, especially for this, because it probably takes on maybe 2 or 3% in the barrels anyway, depending on how much whiskey's left in the cask as well. But they did do a lot of rework on Stormy Port, which is the house porter. And when Chris took over the brewery first, it was a sub 5% porter. It's now 5.5%. So it's been made a lot more robust. And the 200 Fathoms is basically that's Big Brother, from talking to Chris before. But I think it's probably a tweaked recipe from the year before, because they probably would have taken feedback on board from their own tasting and people's tastings, going, yeah, maybe it's a little bit thin, maybe we need to bulk up the malt base a bit to give it that luxurious mouthfeel, because it really feels like you're drinking an expensive bottle of beer. To me, like, sometimes you pay all these, £6, £7, £8 for a bottle of beer, and you think, God, I feel a bit gypped after that. In terms of you getting that luxury in the mouthfeel, in the flavour, the packaging is really good. And it's just something, to me, I think it's well worth.
How much was that one again?
I think it was €9.50 a bottle, €9.50.
Which is about £2.
Yeah, now it's you guys should be buy offers, given the euro situation at the moment. But no, yeah, it's quite good value.
Well, that's a fair price for that bottle of beer. I mean, like you were saying, there's a definite luxury feeling about it, because you got the wax top, and that's easy for some breweries to stick on a bottle to make you feel like you're buying something special. But then you crack it open and you pour it out, and this is one of those few beers that we do each year, Steve, that is an experience to drink.
Absolutely, mate, yeah.
It's just it's a smashing little beer. I can't wait to drain my glass of it now.
But at the same time, you don't want to, because you don't want it to be gone.
Well, I need to go to bed.
I'm there right now. I'm just gonna carry on sipping this, and for the next couple of hours. I think this isn't one that's going to get finished by the end of the show tonight for me.
Oh, mine's almost done.
Yeah. Why am I not surprised?
Yeah, but I think we've got 2 more bottles of it left.
Yeah.
I think. So I'll be hiding them before you come over in February, Steve.
I was again just preempted. I was just about to say, better put them somewhere, say.
I'll be like, good old Blackbeard with his treasure map of buried beer around the house.
Blackbeard. Blackbeard the pirate.
Yeah.
All right, as we head towards the end, Steve, have you got a prize for this week, mate?
There's always a prize, and it's a first-time winner,
hey.
I think,
Is it
this
us?
week. No, it's not you. Unfortunately, it's not you. If you was to use the hashtag, maybe you'd be in with a shout every now and again.
I use the hashtag all the time.
Yeah, you don't.
Anyway, this week's prize goes to a regular listener of the show and friend of the show, Peter McCary, for an incredible picture of the range of Brew by Numbers 100 beers that were released last week. It's a stunning picture. You can link through to it in tonight's show notes. It's on our Instagram feed. I'm going to pack up a great big empty box of nothing, and I'm going to hand deliver it to Pete this week, I think, because his picture is so deserved of a hand delivered box of nothing. And if you want to enter your own picture for a chance of winning your very own big box of nothing, put a picture on Instagram, use the hashtag Cheers Guys, and if your picture is the one that jumps out at me next week in our final prize of the series, you will get a great big box of nothing, and I will guarantee delivery of that box to you before Christmas.
Good old Pete. Right, have we got a hot topic this week, mate? I think we do.
We do indeed, and Wayne and Janice will hopefully know what Hot Topic is all about. It's a weekly discussion segment where we put something on Twitter, we get people involved, and then we discuss it on the show. So this week's Hot Topic was about festive beers, and I asked the question on Twitter using the polls: festive beers, nah, humbug, or ho ho yo. You can see what I did there, can't you? You can see what I did. Anyway, 55% of people this week going in favour of festive beers, which really surprises me, actually, considering the backlash that there were for pumpkin beers. But here's a few of the standout comments off of Twitter this week. So the great Cubby-O doesn't think we need festive beers. If it's cold winter, just crack open the impy stouts instead. I think we're all agreed on that one tonight. Phil Hardy, there are some absolute Christmas crackers, excuse the pun, so I'm ho ho ho, but there are an awful lot of pump clip turkeys too. People are really getting into the puns this week with the Hot Topic as well. Clayfish used to like an Xmas beer, but that was when he was a lager drinker. Now he gets enough flavour from craft and he finds the spices too much. Martin Oates, great comment this one. Xmas pudding in liquid form, rarely do I like. Beers made to be released at Xmas have potential. Bit like an Xmas single, but don't offend my eardrums with Josh just because it's the 25th of December. Same with the beer, keep it good quality. Beer farts, the subtly spiced ones, yes. The ones that had a shitload of cinnamon thrown in for the sake of it, no, no, no. And then just to finish off with Phil Elliott, overly spiced beers are a bit much, but others I enjoy. A warning though, remember that Stella Artois started out as a festive beer. So that's what people on Twitter are thinking. I shall open it up to the floor. Guys, what do we think about festive beers? Wayne and Janice, let's go with you guys first as our guests. What are your thoughts on this subject?
Personally, I like them. I just think they're a bit fun, and they're only out once a year. Why not? I'm all for them.
I would think yes, they do have a place, but I think that the person who likes cooking in me is thinking the types of things you cook at this time of year, that if they're kind of matched to that in a kind of flavour, and sometimes the spicing and everything is just way out of balance, but the same could be said about some IPAs. They have absolutely zero balance. I think it takes a lot of skill to brew a beer that has things like star anise and other things in it without it tasting like a mouthwash. Generally, that's the test. If you drink it and don't spit it out, it's usually okay. But there's unfortunately, I think, a lot of bad examples of Christmas beer. There's not as many good examples, really.
I think the issue that we get here, and I don't know if this is the same over there, guys, is that we get an awful lot of the regional breweries, and it feels like what they do is they just repackage their standard best bitter ruby ale or whatever, and they just throw a load of spices in it, and they call it, I don't know, Rudolph Sauce or something like that. It kind of, it just goes a bit too far. That was one of my favourites last year. Was it really? Being followed this year by Rudolph's ballsack. But
there's an editing point.
Yeah. I think the beer might have got to me, actually.
Put it down, Steve.
I'm on a rant here now. I'm going to stop myself ranting. Mark, what are your thoughts on the festive beers, mate?
Bullshit beers with their bullshit labels and their bullshit names and their bullshit fucking spices. Make decent beers all year round and stop with the fucking bullshit. Next.
Beer got to him too.
Wow. Aggressive.
I've got nothing to follow that up with.
I suppose it depends. Like, if it's like your standard ruby or English bitter, and you're just literally chucking a spiced tea bag in it like a bouquet garni, like, what the hell is the point? But there are some very good traditional European Christmas ales that are out there. Like Belgium, obviously, produce them regularly. You know, you've got the different seasonal blends of the Delirium beers, and you know, like there's a brewery actually down in Tipperary that does a Scandinavian-inspired Yule Ale, it's called, and it's actually not terrible in the sense of overspiced. You can get the complexity of what they're trying to do, but at the same time, it's not called Rudolph's Langer or whatever, you know?
Yeah, but I think all of those fantastic seasonal beers are overshadowed by the purely marketing-driven ones that have the stupid names and the stupid labels. And I like
absolutely, yeah.
Just the regional beers repackaged with cinnamon and.
The same as the pumpkin beers. Like I think I only tasted one pumpkin beer this year that I would actually buy again, and that was a new entrant to the market, new brewery from just outside Warren Point in Northern Ireland, called Mourne Mountain. They made a pumpkin porter, but the main difference was it didn't taste like sweet pumpkins and a load of spices chucked in. It was just really, really subtle, that you got enough of the hint of the spices and a little bit of the hint of sweetness from the pumpkin. Really good. Janice actually reviewed it on the blog. But very few pumpkin beers would I buy out of choice. And I would be very cynical myself generally of Christmas beers, but I think they have a bit of a place because you never know. It could convert someone.
Absolutely, and you know, I'm not against that. And you know, some of the comments tonight, you know, like Clay mentioned that he used to enjoy them when he was a lager drinker, and that's fair enough. And I think you know, maybe sometimes we're a little bit guilty of looking down from our ivory towers, and we're up here. Oh, isn't beer great? We're drinking a 10% barrel aged impy stout while we're having a go at Rudolph's latest incarnation in a bottle. But for me, I'm very much with what the great Cabio was saying on the hot topic, that I would much rather at this time of year, and I think I said this at the outset of the show, the minute we started drinking this beer, give me these instead. I want a big, thick, warming beer that's really going to warm me up, and I would much rather drink that over Christmas than some other dross that's been served up, probably in a clear glass bottle as well. But that's a hot topic for another day.
So what have we done? What have we started?
Let's I think let's get a round of final thoughts on this beer. And before we do, just to keep with the theme of tonight's show, tonight's interview at the end is with Caroline Hennessy, who's the co-author of Sláinte, the book. And we talked to Caroline about the famous chocolate brownie porters, which we've mentioned tonight, and a whole host of other things, including cooking with beer, food, recipes, and all the rest of it. So make sure you stay tuned at the end of the show for that. Let's go round and get some final thoughts on the beer. Wayne, let's start with you, mate.
Yeah, I'm still really enjoying it. Still have some left. Sipping away here. I've got last year's one as well that I'll be sipping as well.
Janice, can you just move the tables, please?
Don't worry.
I said that already. I didn't want to be wearing like an ice hockey mask and scaring poor old Mark there.
Yeah, you're never going to live it down, mate. I'm sorry. There's no way you're ever coming back on this show without us mentioning it.
Keeps interesting, you know.
Sorry, carry on. So you're still doing the two bottles side by side. Which one's the winner for you?
The latest one. I think it just shows a bit of a mature. There's a mature base beer in there. I think when Chris first took over, he was trying all sorts of mad things, like he was redeveloping recipes here, left and right. And I think the new base recipe that's gone into the casks shows a good bit of balance anyway. That it's ready and able to accept all the properties it's going to take from them beautiful Teelings casks. But that's not to say that the other one isn't without its positives. But it's great. I suppose it's like the evolution of a brewery, in the sense that you're seeing the skill level stepped up, and we've seen it again with his sours and everything this year. And he's really not afraid to try anything different.
Okay, Janice, what are you thinking on it?
Mine's gone.
Shock.
Mine's gone. I thought it was absolutely delicious. I loved it with the little bit of whiskey that I poured myself as well. It's one that I wish we really did have a lot more of, because I would like to enjoy that on Christmas Day.
Okay, I'm going to go with everything that I've already said. It's silky smooth, velvety. It's got a lovely light thickness to it. There's all sorts of flavours going on in there. Chocolate, caramel. There's some wood at the end from the whiskey, and there's that slight whiskey burn. It's just a lovely beer, and I'm very much with you. I wish I had another one of these, because it's absolutely stunning. Mark, final thoughts from you, mate?
Pretty much the same. No, I've finished mine. Pretty easy for a 10% impy, even though there was a lot of flavours and a lot going on. It's a lovely sipper, and nice bit of gulp as well. You can gulp it as well, guys. It went down pretty easily, I have to say.
That's good for. I drank mine a lot faster than you girls.
I'm almost feeling like you're doing it on purpose now, and you're just putting the hashtag Mark quotes out there just for people to pick up on.
I do like that hashtag, I have to say. Keep it up, guys. No, it was lovely. Like I was saying before, that lovely thick sweet malt in the middle, offset by the bitter yeastiness and all the sweetness actually kind of enveloping it, and the viscosity is very nice. So there you go. Right.
I think it's quite luxurious, you know. It just tastes like a luxurious imperial stout that just happens to be aged in whiskey barrels.
Tastes like more to me.
The viscous luxury is...
Is that enough? Cut him off.
Right, Stevie, I think we're heading towards the end, aren't we?
We are, mate, yes.
What's coming up next week?
Next week, it's the end of what's been a fantastic season. Season 8 has been
a big one.
Pretty much our biggest season ever. And next week we're finishing it off with another big beer. We're doing the Fuller's Vintage Ale from last year, so it's the 2014 edition of the Fuller's Vintage Ale. Plus we'll be doing our normal end of season look back at the highlights of the season. Mm-hmm. And we'll be asking listeners to share theirs with us as well. So if you do have any highlights of this season that you want to share, just tweet them directly at us, and we'll try and give you a mention on next week's show.
Yeah, Wayne and Janice, where can people find you online, guys?
You can find us at irishbeersnob.com.
Mrs Beer Snob.
At Irish Beer Snob on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook.
My Instagram is Mrs_Beer Snob.
Was Mrs Beer Snob taken?
The underscore.
No, it actually was, and I keep getting tagged in. Some other person keeps getting tagged in photos. That must be me.
Yeah, like that's. Let's just say we won't mention the war there.
So, when's your next podcast coming out?
Sometime 2016.
Coming back with a bang.
Yeah,
January.
we'll be back. We're just kind of tying things down that we're probably going to go fortnightly podcast. Kicking off in the middle of January when everyone's at the height of depression and can't face any more drink other than dry January. Well, a lot of bollocks. And you know we'll just kind of kick off from there and see where it takes us. Hopefully we'll get to do a live podcast when Steve is over. Hopefully looking into doing that, and one or two other little tricks up our sleeve.
Very good. You can find us online at beeroclockshow.co.uk, on Twitter at beeroclockshow, on Instagram at beeroclockshow. Steve's on Untapped at Beershow Steve. I'm on Untapped at Beershow Mark, and on Twitter at Beershow Mark. Don't forget you can find all your beers at Ales by Mail, Beautiful Beers, Beer Merchants, Ebria, and now the Craft Can Directory, who all offer a 10% discount to Beer O'Clock Show listeners on any beers from their website. So check out all the details on our beer list page. Don't forget, next week, final show, Fuller's Vintage Ale 2014. It's going to be a smasher, and obviously our usual full season review for the end of season show. Stay around after the tinkly music for our interview, or Steve's interview rather, with Caroline Hennessy from Sláinte, the book, the author of Sláinte. She's not from Sláinte. She wrote Sláinte. Steve, I'm done.
She co-wrote it. She's not from there, no.
I think it's time for Betty Buys.
I think we need to put you to bed tonight, Mark, yes.
All right, tuck me in.
A virtual tuck-in.
Yes.
Wayne and Janice, it's always an absolute pleasure, especially Janice.
Thank you.
I love you, Janice. Yeah.
I love you too.
No coffee,
cheers, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure having you back on again.
And Wayne, can't wait to meet you in a couple of weeks, pal, at our Crimbo Crawl in Leeds.
Be good fun, all right, yeah. Oh, back on the old stomping ground.
Until next week, Stevie.
It's been the highlight of my week.
And mine. Bye-bye.
It's Beer O'Clock, and this week we welcome food blogger and author of my favourite craft beer book, Sláinte, Caroline Hennessy, to the show. Caroline, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Steve.
Let's start off with a little bit of your background. Tell us about your background as a food writer, as a food blogger. How did you get into that?
Well, I've always been interested in food. Like since I was a little kid, I was always stuck in the kitchen, making up my own recipes and trying to figure out, the kind of things that people do in the Great British and Great Irish Bake Offs. Like all the challenges. It was like I was doing those things when I was a kid because I just loved baking, and obviously eating the rewards at the end of it. So. I always had a real interest in food at that stage. But, I thought then, I considered training as a chef, but then I spent 3 months working in a hotel kitchen as a waitress, and that kind of knocked that out of me. So I kind of went off and became a journalist and, worked in reviewing films and music and books and things like that. But it was really when I was in New Zealand that it gave me the chance, the time, to think properly about food again. And that was when I set up my blog, which is BiblioCook, and that was back in 2005. So it was one of the first Irish food blogs to be set up in Ireland. It was at a very early stage for food blogs. It wasn't at a time when you could really just, you had WordPress, and the way now it's so easy to set up a blog or a website.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Back in those days, you had to know about coding. You had to have a friend who knew about coding who could figure it out for you. So it was a lot more difficult. But from the moment I set up the blog, it was with the idea of writing about food. And when you're writing about food, you have a different slant on it. You're looking at things a different way. Like when I was in New Zealand, I used to go to markets a lot. And say, for instance, I'd go to I had my favourite apple man, and I went from going to him and buying an apple or buying a bag of apples to going to him, asking him what varieties were in season, what were his favourite varieties, did he have any recipes, and then going down to the orchard and picking his apples myself. And it was a similar thing. That's also where I got so interested in beer. Before I lived in New Zealand, I lived with a Kiwi and an Aussie in Dublin, and I could never understand why the guys just thought that Irish beer, they didn't say that Irish beer wasn't very good, but they just said it wasn't very interesting. And I didn't get it. I said, oh, sure, look, there are plenty of taps up at the bar. Go off and get a pint of Guinness, go off and get a pint of, it's just the normal stuff that you don't even realise until you go to New Zealand. And then I was living within 15 minutes walk of 3 different microbreweries. And it totally blew my mind initially, this whole idea that you had all these different types of beer available, many of them paired very, very thoughtfully and carefully with good food. And then, we did a food and beer pairing night for National Physiotherapist Day, which is a very important occasion, needs to be celebrated. And that was my first time of having a dark beer with chocolate.
Where did the original idea come from for putting all these ideas down in print?
Well, I have to say, Kristen Jensen, my co-author, was just incredible when it came down to writing the book. We set up the Irish Food Bloggers Association together back in 2010, so we were in communication a lot about that. And then we kind of noticed that our conversations were turning more from things to update on the website or to do events to organise, to have you tasted this beer or did you try that beer? And it suddenly became, we both, because she's American, so she would have been used to really good beer before she moved over from the States to Ireland. So we we're both doing these things kind of at tastings in parallel. And then one day she said to me, will we write a book together? And I was like, oh yeah, let's do it. And we didn't realise how long it was going to take to get a publisher interested. And so that was a bit of a challenge, because the publishers, when we started pitching this initially, the publishers just thought, oh, it's a fad. You've seen the book and you've cooked from it as well. We knew that it was a snapshot of a time in Irish brewing that was very much here and now. But we also knew that we could make it more than just a book that you have for a year, so we put in lots about tasting beers, lots about how to match beers with different foods, and the baking section or the baking and cooking section is obviously very close to my heart. lots and lots of testing for there, especially those double chocolate porter brownies.
Yeah, they're what I've had the most fun with. I've got to say, I do keep experimenting with your recipe and seeing what else I can add to it, and seeing how I can twist it even a little bit further. Where did you find the inspiration for the recipes that are in there, and how did you go about selecting the various beers to go in the recipes?
Well, the inspiration from the recipes, in some cases, would come about maybe from a title. You just think, like if sometimes you find a name and then you develop a recipe to go with it. So I already had the brownies because I developed those for the first ever cookery demonstration I did using beer and baking. Just love playing with different beers in the recipes. You can have, like you've done, Steve, those brownies, they're really simple. And then if you just tweak, like you can kind of keep it consistent, say, with the chocolate, for instance. And then if you tweak with different beers, different styles of stouts and porters, I've even used red ales in there. And you get very different flavours, and it's just so much more interesting than just having a regular brownie.
I suppose that's a consequence of having so much great beer to choose from these days as well. And that kind of brings me on to getting you to think about where do you think beer is, or craft beer is in Ireland right now?
I just keep saying this every year. It's a really exciting time in Irish beer, because I suppose, because I'm also involved with 8 Degrees Brewing, and they were set up in 2011. So I went from being an observer of the scene and being from outside to being stuck in the middle of it and seeing the problems and the challenges from inside. And I think what's happening in Irish beer at the moment is incredible. There's been a huge increase in the number of breweries, in the number of beers that all the breweries are producing. And the challenge now, if you're a new brewer, is to try and get your stuff into the market, because it's gone from, 5 years ago, if you were looking for an Irish craft beer, it was quite difficult to find it, like whether on draft or on bottles. Whereas now you have to, if you go into, say, a place like Redmond's in Ranelagh, which is a great off license, and they have a whole fridge which has lots and lots of different Irish craft beers, and to stand there and watch people shopping it is really, really interesting, because they have an incredible selection of international beers as well. So you see people going and they'll shop by style, so they'll get lots of different IPAs, or they'll go for reds, and to do a tasting like that. So I think for Irish beer at the moment, is the challenge is probably to get seen in lots of ways.
Where do you see it going in the next 12 months?
I would hope we don't lose anybody. One of the great things, when we published the book, we had a list of, like, say, all the new breweries from 2014 that when we were writing the book, we couldn't actually write a piece on them. We just listed them. And we haven't lost anybody yet, which is a good sign. The big challenge is for breweries to be able to welcome guests onto the premises and sell them beer. Like, people regularly turn up at breweries all around the country, and especially people from the States who are used to this whole idea of tap rooms and being able to buy direct from the source, which makes sense. It just makes so much sense. So I would love to see in the next 12 months a change in licensing.
And what's next for you, Caroline? What's going to be your next big challenge after getting Sláinte out there?
Oh, that was such a challenge, Steve. It took me a long time to recover from it. Like Kristen, the same. But the good thing is, Kristen and I still talk to each other, which isn't always the way with co-authors. So at the moment, I'm actually working on a really exciting project with a musician friend of mine, and we're going to be doing a beer tasting by sound at it's not a music festival. Sorry, it's an audio festival called Hearsay. So the thing is, we're going to have people with blindfolds on it, and we're going to be manipulating the sounds they hear while they taste beers. And now some of the beers are going to be the same beers and all the rest of it, and then we're going to get them to vote on what they think of it are the flavours and what the reactions are. So it really is, it's called the blind experiment. It really is an experiment in taste and sound using beer.
It sounds really exciting, actually. I'd be interested to see the outcome of that.
So will I, Steve.
Now, I'm quite lucky. I managed to acquire a copy of your book from a friend. Where can people get hold of your book? Is it only available in Ireland, or is it available to buy online? Can people get it from places like Amazon, that sort of thing?
You definitely can. It's available on Amazon, and it's also available on kenny's.ie, which is an Irish online shop. And as far as I know, they'll post anywhere in the world free of charge.
Just to finish up, where can people read your blog? Where can people read your other recipes that you've got? Where do people find you online?
Well, it's bibliocook.com. I think it's Food and Books was the original, idea for it. So think Bibliocook, and and then this Bibliocook has a book, and so it all makes things very interesting. But yeah, so I'm online at Bibliocook, and that's where I do my showcase, or I let people know about different events that are happening and also different recipes I'm developing.
Okay, well I'm going to let you go back and start practicing with sounds and beers to make sure you get that sort of thing right. Thank you very much for giving up your time, and we really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks, Steve, and thanks, Mark, and Sláinte.